Are you an alt-aholic? Do you like re-rolling and making a new character as soon as you find a shiny new item? Do you have more level 50 characters than you have level 100 characters because you just keep trying new stuff? It's okay, you're in the right place. If you've never made a loot filter before, don't worry, I have videos here on YouTube about how to make a loot filter and specifically how I like to make a loot filter here in Last Epoch. I'll link those in the description of the video. This video is 5 parts to it. Make sure to check the timestamps so you can jump around to the various chapters here on YouTube. Click on whichever class you like to play, or the one that you want to play, or the one that you're thinking that you might play, or the one that you're playing right now, so that you can see the strongest idle options that are available to you in Last Epoch. Before we even get started talking about class-specific idols, I want to tell you what to put on your loot filter at the very beginning. So this is something that I do with all my new characters, especially if I'm playing some like weekend tournament or hardcore solo, that kind of thing. I love adding to my loot filter anything that's a 1x1, like a little 1x1 idol right here that has any kind of resistance on it. So oftentimes you'll end up with idols that have like maybe a 1x1 here and a 2x1 there and a 3x4. I guess that doesn't exist. But you're going to have gaps in your idols, and you can fill in those gaps with just a little bit of Fizz res or a little bit of necrotic res or void res, and that helps to fill in the gaps in your defenses. Add a loot filter early. You can always take it off if you need to, but add a loot filter for like 1x1 idols that have any kind of resistance on them. On top of that, one of my early loot filter rules is anything that looks like a tall, like a 1x2 idol. It's I can spell, I promise. So a 1x2 idol that has like health plus resistance, vitality plus resistance. If we're talking about the horizontal ones, this would be a 2x1. So 2x1s can have vitality plus resistance, which is an excellent thing to put in your build. And then the 1x2 is going to have health plus resistance as a suffix. And probably the strongest generic idol in the whole game is a 1x2. Man, look at this art here. A 1x2 idol that has a health and percent health. Sometimes you hear people call these a hybrid health or a double health idol. You can fit so many of them into your build. Honestly, if you have like 5 or 6 or 7 of these that you use on any build, you're making a good choice. Idols tend to be very strong damage, but oftentimes it's the defenses of a build that really needs to be shored up. Getting from 2,000 health all the way up to 3,000 health or 4,000 health, that's the kind of thing that becomes possible once you have those 1x2 health idols. So honorable mention to these guys right here. Let's start off with Primalist first. These are the 7 most impactful idol affixes available to you as a Primalist. If you're planning on playing a Primalist either now or maybe at some point in the future, there's a build that looks exciting to you, put these idols on your loot filter first and foremost so that when you play that build, you got what you need. Idol number 1 is minion melee attack speed. Look at the roll on this. This goes between 9% increased minion melee attack speed and 24. So even if you find one of these, keep it on your loot filter. You want to find a well-rolled one that also has a good complementary affix on it. The second one here is some increased critical strike chance. Just kidding, it's base critical strike chance. There are other affixes that you can get for increased critical strike chance, but by and large, you're going to be able to get that. The base critical strike chance on a minion is really, really impactful. This rolls between 1 and 2. See if you can get it with 2. Number 3 and number 4 are kind of the same. Let's tie them together. We have increased aspect of the boar effect, which gives you more damage reduction when you have aspect of the boar. You probably have it all the time. And the other one is aspect of the viper effect. This gives you better poison chance. I think poison's still going to be good if you're playing a poison skill. Meme poison skills like Poison Warpath, probably not going to be a thing. But if you're playing Serpent Strike, you will play poison. This is something you will absolutely want. Number 5 here is critical strike avoidance for you and for your minions. Remember, there's some options for minion critical strike avoidance. You could use things like Ribbons of Blood. It's a unique ring that you get from the monoliths. That can make your minions crit avoidance capped. But you might also be using this for yourself, for your minions. You might combine this with a Spriggan companion, this summon Spriggan pet. With this, along with summon Spriggan, could critical strike kind of avoidance you without having to rely on any kind of blessing or any affixes on your gear. Number 6 has a really low number on it. It's only 4 to 10% chance to summon a Thorn Totem on hit. But as long as you have a Thorn Totem, you can proc the beginning of the Shaman Mastery, which says you gain increased buffs, increased attack speed, mana regeneration, armor, while you have a totem. This is a great way of summoning a totem. There's also some combo builds you can play with this, like exploding some totems, but first and foremost, I tend to use this for getting the buffs from the Shaman tree. And the last one here for Primalist, if you're ever planning on playing a Frostbite centered build, you will absolutely want this. It rolls between 25 and 60% chance to apply Frostbite and hit with cold skills. For our second mastery here, let's talk about Mage. There's a couple that we need to talk about. We're going to call it 7 real affixes to cover if you want to play a Mage at some point. You're playing one right now. These are the most powerful idle options that you have available to you. The first one is a little bit boring, but I have used it and I have wanted good rolls on it. This is mana and armor. Especially if you're planning on doing anything with mana stacking. Maybe you are using a Fractured Crown unique helmet to have damage taken from mana before life. This kind of stuff is very, very strong. It gives you both mana and armor all rolled up into one small idol, either 3x1 or a 4x1, either 3x1 or a 4x1. If you're in the market for something like this, this is exactly the kind of idol that you're interested in using defensively. Speaking of defensive options, sure, you could spec your teleport all the way to the left to have some stun immunity if you've used teleport recently, or you could save all of those points and have stun immunity on your teleport on your idols instead. So this is a large idol, sorry, it's a huge idol. It's a 1x4, so it's very, very tall. If you can fit this in, 2 to 3 seconds of stun immunity if you teleported recently is a very, very strong defensive option that you could move off your teleport tree in order to fit in other points on your teleport instead. The third strong idol here, it's actually 3 different idol options, but we're going to wrap it into one. This is increased fire or cold or lightning damage, doubled if you have over 300 mana. One of the big reasons that you see mages or sorcerers using a mana wand instead of using a dragonhorn wand is those crystal wands, the mana wand, they have flat mana on them, and it really helps you get over 300 maximum mana so that you can take advantage of these idols here. So this is 16 to 40% increased cold, fire, lightning damage if you have over 300 mana. The smaller ones are only 11 to 27, but remember, all of that's doubled. You really want one of those high rolls on these idols as well. Number 4 is definitely skill specific if you're playing a Spellblade, but for me, it feels incredible. So hopefully you've played Surge. If you haven't played Surge, you should play Surge. Surge cooldown recovery speed feels fantastic for getting better use out of the skill, whether you're using it for movement, quality of life, whether you're using it for damage like I tend to. This is a really nice idol to have in your collection. Number 5 is something that you may not have cared about too much until right now, but in 0.9, when the new patch drops for multiplayer, we have some new options, including some new unique items for taking advantage of spark charges. If you want to play something with spark charges, this might be something on your radar as well. Chance to apply a spark charge on melee hit. Like most of the items we talked about, the roll on this, the range on this is very, very big. 8 to 25% chance to get a spark charge on melee hit. If you're in the market for this, you definitely want a good roll on it, not just a low roll. Number 6, once again, this is a Frostbite one. It's kind of similar to the Primalist one, but if you're playing Frostbite, you want to have all that application rate. This is 25 to 60% chance to apply Frostbite on hit with cold skills. If you're playing Frostbite, yeah, you probably want one of these too. And number 7 for Mage is actually 3 things all wrapped up into one. Let's talk about them one at a time, but they're all kind of the same idea. And this is taking advantage of Lightning Aegis. If you have Lightning Aegis, if you look it up, it's 25% less damage taken, which is a huge defensive option that is not immediately apparent unless you're knowledgeable about the game, you play it for a whole bunch. It also gives you 50% increased damage while you have that Lightning Aegis, which is a great reason to be playing lightning damage. So Lightning Aegis, chance to gain Lightning Aegis when you are hit. This is 4 to 10% chance. You can have multiple of these as well. The other idol, the second idol that's worth calling out in this regard is Cast Speed. While you have Lightning Aegis, 10 to 28%, which is a huge amount of cast speed. And the last Aegis related idol is this one here, increased lightning damage while you have Lightning Aegis. If you're in the market for this, you might also be in the market for increased lightning damage if you have over 300 mana, but this is an option, and maybe you don't want to be stacking mana, so keep this one on your radar as well. The next mastery that we'll talk about is Sentinel. There's a lot of affixes that are pretty good here. We're going to group it into 4, even though I'm going to show you more than just 4. First things first is block effect. If you have a high block chance, then the next thing you're looking for is block effect. Especially if you have something like Bastion of Honor. If Bastion of Honor continues to be unnerved, this is the kind of stuff that you want. Remember, block effect is insanely strong as long as you have high block chance or Bastion of Honor. It's a really, really good defensive mechanic, and it's very widely available, especially on idols like this. If you have space in your idols to scale your defenses, watch out for this. The second idol here is notorious for being hard to get, but there will be changes in 0.9 multiplayer to make this one a little bit more common for the people who actually want to play a build like this. Whether you're playing Bleed Hammer Throw, or Smite Hammer Throw, or Crit Hammer Throw, or Electrify Hammer Throw, or any kind of Hammer Throw, you might be interested in this kind of thing. This is chance to cast Smite when you hit with a throwing attack. If you've never used this before, I recommend it. This is some of my favorite builds that I've ever played in last Epoch. Idol number 3 is kind of like group number 3. I'm going to show you 1, 2, 3, 4 different tabs here, and they all kind of fit in the same genre of skill. Void Knight, void damage, echoing, inspiration, things like this. So the first idol in the subgroup here for VK related stuff is chance to gain inspiration on kills with void skills. Inspiration is a buff that gives you extra cooldown recovery speed. It helps with your anomaly, your devouring orb, casting abyssal echoes more often, using any void skill more often, like a volatile reversal, so that you can stack the debuffs. If you have space in your idols, this is a very impactful way of getting some extra cooldown recovery speed for your build. All right, Void Knight related thing number 2 is increased damage if you've cast Devouring Orb recently. This is percent increased damage. It's not void damage, but you're probably only using Devouring Orb if you're actually playing a Void Knight, and you'll probably be scaling void damage at that point. Now, if you're playing a Void Knight, you probably also have Echoes or some investment in Echo because it's the base skill or is the base components of being a Void Knight. Your skill is Echo. So increased void damage specifically for 4 seconds when a skill echoes. You're probably going to be proccing this all the time. It's a consistent up to 80% increased damage buff for your build. The last Void Knight related thing, I'm excited to use this one, and I'm actually not excited because of the void damage application, because of something else. This is increased echo damage when a skill echoes. Normally, I would tend to avoid this kind of thing. I don't think it's consistent enough unless you're playing something like your Racing Strike, and maybe you're playing Racing Strike with echoes, but I don't think it's a particularly good build. But if you're in the market for something like this, it is a extremely high value. The reason I'm most excited for this is whether you're playing crit, void damage, melee, Rive, or what I'm more interested in, bleed Rive as a Void Knight. The Rive nodes say that your chance to echo is doubled, and you have another more multiplier that's tripled when it applies to your echoes. So this idol in particular, playing some kind of melee Rive as a Void Knight, looks really strong to me. I'm going to put this on my loot filter. The last 3 idol affixes to talk about for Sentinel, they're kind of the same, but pick and choose based on the kind of builds that you're playing right now, or maybe the builds you think you want to play in the future. We have Armor Shred. You want Armor Shred somewhere in your build. Definitely. So remember, Armor Shred only applies to hit-based builds. If you're playing a damage or time scale, you don't need this, but something crit-based, yes. So chance to shred armor on hit. We also have chance to shred armor on hit with throwing attacks, especially if you're doing spiral hammers. This is a great way of stacking it up. And then chance to shred armor on melee hit. Pick and choose whichever one you want. These are very impactful. See if you can squeeze them into your build if you can. The 4th mastery that we'll talk about here is Acolyte. Honorable mention to the Acolyte idol that has percent health on it. I think it's a 1x3, a tall idol. If you're filtering for percent health on your idols, you're going to find it anyways. But it's really nice to have that much percent life on your Acolyte idols. So onto this, we have 4 idols for Acolytes. If you're thinking about playing Acolyte in the future, this is something that you want to think about. First one is something that you would never think about before until now in 0.9, because there's a unique item that's been revamped to allow your Hungering Souls to shotgun. And if your Hungering Souls can shotgun, then it'd be really nice to have chance for Hungering Souls to fire 6 additional projectiles. I was messing around with this on the Multiplayer Invitational. It feels really strong. I would recommend watching out for this if you want to play that specific build to have your shotgunning Hungering Souls. On to number 2, this is what I would call the strongest, maybe second strongest, extraordinarily strong build in last Epoch, and that's Flame Rates. In order to play Flame Rates and have your Flame Rates proc consistently, you'll want to have maybe 1, 2, or maybe 3 of these idols, depending on how well they've rolled. So they go from 25 up to 60% chance to summon Wraith, chance for summon Wraith to summon a Flame Wraith instead. This is key if you want to be playing that Flame Wraith build, which is absolutely absurd, by the way. The next one here is both mobility and frenzy and haste and adaptive damage and culling and just having more fun more consistently. This is increased cooldown recovery speed with transplant. Doesn't matter what you're playing as Acolyte, this is something that you're probably interested in because it procs a bunch of stuff, both defensively and offensively. Transplant has got some changes to it, so watch out for that. Remember, Rip Blood is maybe it survives, maybe it gets nerfed, but currently you can proc your Rip Blood off of Transplant, which is not new. But Rip Blood also gives you adaptive damage globally to your build per enemy hit by your Rip Blood recently. That can be procced off Transplant, having more cooldown recovery speed on your Transplant. If that survives, then there's even more reason to put this on the build. Even if not, this is a very strong idol, and keep an eye out for it. Okay, and not every Acolyte build is a Lich build, even though all of mine are. But if you're playing some kind of, what are they called, Necromancers, you can have your summons apply Mark for Death for you. Remember, Mark for Death is a curse that lowers the enemy's resistance. Having your minions do this instead of you do this is a great way of amping up the damage of your summon build. The last mastery that we're going to talk about here is Rogue. So we have both Blade Dancer and Marksman for like bow stuff, melee stuff. Let's go ahead and get started. The first ones here are kind of the same. Let's call them out at the same time. This is chance to poison on hit and chance to bleed on hit. So these are also like generic. They can roll on, your 1x2s, 2x1s. But you can get also on the 4x1s and 3x1s for class specific rogue stuff. If you're playing an ailment kind of build and you want some extra chance to apply the ailment on hit, this is exactly the place to be. Number 2 is a little bit more exciting than just chance to apply an ailment on hit. Remember, there's a lot of changes coming into shurikens, allowing you to convert more wholly, get more damage on your items, and get more adaptive damage on the, belt, glove, and amulet. It's flat damage instead of percent increased damage for your throwing attacks. So that kind of stuff works really well with this. So this is added lightning damage with shurikens. If you're playing some kind of lightning damage shuriken build, this is exactly the kind of thing you want in your build. Next up is me cheating. So there's 5 different affixes that we should talk about here, and this is because armor shred is very strong. So any kind of shred that you can work into your build, especially on affixes and your idols, is a nice place to be. So we have chance to shred armor on hit with on bow hit, chance to shred armor on melee hit, shred armor on throwing hit. Armor shred duration really helps for scaling up the boss damage for single target, and armor shred effect, which is another more multiplier, right? If you are in the market for any kind of armor shred, this is excellent. The only thing I would say about this is maybe you want something that's more like build enabler and build defining, or maybe just like life or percent health on your idols. If you have slots for it, this is amazing, but you can also get armor shred on your amulet and on your gloves, so you might want to work it into your build that way instead. Idol affix number 4 that we need to talk about for rogue stuff is one of my favorite. It's a marksman one. This is called Tense. It's the name of it. You can put Tense in your filter, search for it. It says increased bow attack speed for 3 seconds when you use a bow attack with a 10-second cooldown. So for 3 seconds every 10 seconds, you have 21% increased bow attack speed. You can be dodging around the rest of the time. But if you want that huge giga damage to come in, this is one of the places where you can really amp up your damage. You need to play around it. If you're comfortable playing around it, the payoff is there. If you're not comfortable playing around with this kind of a timer, then just skip it. That's fine. We had a marksman one, so let's talk about a melee one as well. This is critical strike multiplier while dual wielding. This is only a 3x1 idol, which means you can fit in a whole bunch of them in your build. Should be 4 of them, which max rolled would give you 120 crit multi. If they're well rolled, then you have all 4 of them. So this is 12 to 30% crit multi while you are dual wielding. Remember, the dual wield bonus has been changed this time around in 0.9. Instead of taking 15% increased damage, you are only taking 12% increased damage. Pair that with the glancing blows that you should be able to cap, especially if you are dual wielding swords, then this is a really nice way to get some damage and also not lose so much defense. We have a couple skill-specific idols to talk about here. If you're playing multi-shot, if you're using unique items that give you additional arrows with multi-shot, if you're gearing in such a way that you have additional arrows with multi-shot, then all of a sudden, increased damage per arrow with multi-shot is looking pretty good. The top end of this is double the bottom end, so it's 3 to 6% increased damage per arrow with multi-shot. If this is your main damage skill, which feels really good, by the way, then this is definitely something that you should be keeping an eye out for. Umbral Blades got changed, will be changed, is currently changed on the 0.9 server. We'll see how this, whether that change happens or whether it gets changed even more. In any case, the change with Umbral Blades is that the enemy can only be damaged by one Umbral Blade at a time. So if you have 3 spinning blades on the enemy, they're only being damaged by one of them, which really, really hurts your single target damage. However, if you're playing some kind of Umbral Blade build, or maybe you're playing a Poison Umbral Blade build that wants to have Explodey Umbral Blades and wants to get hit so you can stack up the number of Dust Shrouds that you have, sounds like a build to me. Increase damage with Umbral Blades per stack of Dust Shroud, just instead of don't get hit, just get hit. Remember, the low end of this is half the high end of this, 4 to 8% increased damage per Dust Shroud. How many Dust Shrouds can you get in your build? This is a great way of scaling the damage with Umbral Blades. And last one here, hold on. I know it says Shadow Dagger effect. Ailment effect is no longer a thing in Last Epoch, but there should be an idol that says Shadow Dagger penetration, because all the effect, like Ignite effect and Bleed effect, has all been changed to penetration instead. There should be a corresponding change on the 0.9 server for Shadow Dagger penetration. If you want to play a Shadow Dagger build, this is the kind of thing that you're looking for. Not nearly as strong as it used to be, but listen, Shadow Daggers needed a nerf. It's fine. If you're playing them, this is the place to be. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. Remember, if you like what I do here on YouTube, leave a comment, a like, a subscribe, tell a friend about the video, help the word get out. Anything that helps the old YouTube algorithm do its magic. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time.